Hi, my name is Julia M. Spencer. I'm a real estate advisor, investor, and your number one source for real estate advice online. In this video, we're going to talk about where to invest. And before I get started with the topic, make sure you go to my website. It's at the bottom of this video. And subscribe for my newsletter there. You'll get a free guide to real estate investing. And it's also a really good way for you to keep in touch with me that way. My email is realestate@juliamspencer.com, or just leave me a comment right at the bottom of this video. Or you can just like and subscribe on my channel and let me know what you think and give me some feedback. So in this video, we're going to talk about where to invest. Now, I had a question recently at a mastermind conference that I went to, and one of the people that went there really wanted to get started with tax sale foreclosure investing, but he lives in Alabama. And if you have heard my videos before, if you researched it a little bit, Alabama has an extremely long redemption period. It's 3 years. So to get started with real estate investing, it just takes an extraordinary amount of time to get ownership of a property or get some sort of return. You pretty much put your money in and it's kind of like stuck in there for several years. So he was trying to find out for me where would be another place for him to go to invest in real estate where the turnaround time for an investment is a little bit shorter than 3 years. So here's the answer that I gave him. I'm going to give this information to you as well in case you're kind of like in the same boat and are located in a state where redemption periods are just extremely long. So the first step is to look at any adjacent states to your state. If we're talking about Alabama, close to there, of course, is Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee as well. So you can look at some of these adjacent states. Louisiana, too, is kind of in the area. And check out those states and see what the redemption periods there are. If they're lien states or if they're deed states, that information is pretty easily accessible online. Also, if you don't know for sure, just send me a message and I'll be glad to answer and let you know. Now, even though those states are in your local area and adjacent to where you are, where you can maybe easily get to an in-person auction with a short travel time, I would also always recommend that if you are doing any kind of travel to another state for personal reasons or maybe for another business that you're running, to check out those auctions in those states as well. I, for example, travel a lot to Nevada, and I also travel to New York a lot. So anything that's up there around the New England, New York area there, Pennsylvania, for example, is a good place for me to check out. New Hampshire, and those states up there, Rhode Island, kind of like a smaller state that may have some options for me as well. New York, of course, as well, is a deed state. And Nevada, of course, Arizona, I always check out Nevada and Arizona, and Utah is also a very good state to invest in. So this is kind of like, the reason I look at these states is because I already go there anyways for another reason. It doesn't hurt that if you have the flexibility to arrange your travel for your other purposes, to arrange your travel around when auction times and dates are, and then you kind of sort of can hit two things at the same time. Another thing that I always tell people is if the redemption period is 3 years on any kind of state where you're trying to invest, check and see if you can find a state where the redemption period is just shorter, or alternatively, look at deed states. So in deed states, you will actually purchase the property right away. There is no redemption period, and you can make your return on any kind of property that you buy a lot quicker. Now, I would recommend, for example, to look at some of the lien states where the time that the lien has been sitting unpaid is counted towards the redemption period. What do I mean by that? So, for example, in the state of Arizona, when the lists come out for the liens that can be purchased from the county, for example, once a year, you can actually see how long these liens have already been on the list. And in the state of Arizona, some of that time that they've been sitting there unpaid counts towards your redemption period already. So if you wanted to do a quick foreclosure and get possession and ownership of a property, you kind of like filter out the ones that have been sitting on the list for quite some time, and then that will reduce your time towards ownership if you wanted to take ownership of any specific property and sell it. So even though it's a lien, there are certain ways to shorten redemption periods, basically. Now, it's always advantageous to purchase properties in your local area. And the reason being is that even if you purchase a lien and the redemption period is super long, like 3 years in Alabama, what you can do is during that time, don't sit idle and try to find the owners of the property and see if you can maybe negotiate some sort of deal with them. Kind of like find out what the status is of the property. You can of course find out if it's vacant or if it's occupied. If it's occupied, try to speak to the owner. If it's vacant, try to speak to the neighbors, kind of get the history, use the time, the redemption period time to your advantage, and don't sit idle, but actually try to do something from day one, even if there's a really long redemption period. So that's always my recommendation. In my ebooks, I describe ways of how you can approach the original owner in a nice and tactful way, how you can approach them and make it a win-win situation for you and the original owner in case they don't want the property. I always pull up this example of this one property that I purchased at auction one time from an older elderly lady, and the reason she couldn't use the property is just she simply couldn't go up the stairs anymore. She was not capable physically to go up the stairs, but she didn't want to get rid of the property because it was in her family for a very long time, and the other wholesalers basically wouldn't give her enough for this property for her to agree to sell it to them. So once I got the lien, that kind of put me in touch with her and in conversation, and I was able to basically find a way to get her the money that she needed to sell the property, and we were able to finish the whole entire deal much quicker than the 1-year redemption period in Georgia where this property was. Now, another way for you to shorten redemption periods, I guess, is to basically fill your pipeline. It doesn't necessarily shorten your redemption periods, but if you start filling your pipeline, eventually something is gonna be close to redemption period being up pretty much every month. So it's gonna take you maybe a couple of years to fill that pipeline, but you gotta continue feeding it so that even though something might be sitting there for 3 years, you don't have to idly wait for the 3 years to be up. You just use that time to work on something else before that and try to sell properties that are near their redemption period being up, or deal with the other properties first. You're not wasting your time just twiddling your thumb for 3 years. You just write those long redemption period properties off and put them in a parking space until you have time to deal with them. Now, this thing is really often overlooked. I do always recommend, now a lot of people want to do this type of investing online, and it's easy for them because they can just sit in front of their computer and type things, but I do always recommend that you go to auctions in person. And why do I say that? There's going to be other investors there, and a lot of times the other investors are sort of kind of in the same boat as you. They may have pipelines already built up of properties that are sitting there, and you can negotiate and ask them, what is their portfolio look like? What does their inventory look like? Maybe they have some properties that they want to get rid of, and you have some that you want to get rid of, and you guys can trade. That might get you to ownership of any one property much quicker. You can also see if there's any kind of properties that they just want to get rid of. Maybe they bought them in error, or realized later on that they made a mistake buying those properties and just want to offset them. So it's always good to make these connections and basically get on other investors' distribution lists, I guess, and find out what it is that they're doing. Another thing that is very valuable when you go to the other auctions and talk to the other investors is that sometimes an individual deal might not look as good to you by yourself, but if you have 2 or 3 people going in on the deal together and kind of splitting the cost of the initial investment plus the cost of remodeling that you may have to do to flip a property, then suddenly this deal isn't so risky anymore. It's spread over 3 people, and the profit, of course, is going to be spread as well. But in my personal philosophy, any profit is better than no profit. So I'll gladly split my profit with other investors if that means I will get a profit versus not have one. And that will also enable you to get some sort of return of a property faster. Also, I wanted to tell you that please don't shy away from the states that have really long redemption periods. And I say that because the states that have very long redemption periods, such as Alabama, what that means is you're going to have a lot less competition for those auctions. The investors in general, what I have found, are extremely impatient, and waiting a whole year sometimes is too long. 2 years, 3 years, just forget it. I won't even go to this auction. I'm going to go to a different one. So they're going to go to a place like Texas where the redemption period is like 6 months or 12 months, and they're just going to completely skip the 3-year ones and passing by maybe some amazing deal that is just left on the table because other investors just think it takes too long. And once you employ all these steps of reducing redemption periods, those long redemption period states are not so unfeasible anymore when the possibility of return and profit at the end of the 3 years is much larger. So remember, shorter redemption periods means that you'll have more competition, but longer redemption periods means you have less competition and you could probably get a lot more profit in those states. So last but not least, if you really just don't want to wait for any kind of redemption period and everything else is just taking too long for you, check into forfeited land commissions. This is something that some of the states and counties have set up. This is where properties are being fueled to or sent to that may have been gone unsold at any one auction or unpaid, or for whatever reason were just unwanted by the general public through the normal sale process or just vacated by the original owners. The forfeited land commission then takes ownership of those properties, and you can basically request a list and purchase properties off that list right off the back without having to go to any auction, without having to wait for any redemption periods, without having any competition. So check those out if they exist in your state. Some states and counties have the information online. Just check it out, forfeited land commissions. You can also ask the counties and states for over-the-counter sales lists. That information is usually at the tax commissioner's or at the tax assessor's office. You have to check. Sometimes it's the tax collector's office. So it doesn't really matter what the government office is called that has those lists in the states that they're available. But anyways, if you have a question, if that's something that's available in your state, you can always ask me. Leave me a comment at the bottom of this video, and then I'll try to point you into the correct direction in your state, and even if it's even possible in your state. So I hope you find this video was useful to you. I do apologize for the background noise a little bit. I am actually in Costa Rica this week, and we are in the city, which I love the city vibe, of course. Kind of like bad to make videos with the noise, but it makes it real as well. So I have a lot more information, a lot more videos, a lot more content coming up for you very, very soon. So make sure you subscribe, hit the bell button there right at the bottom of this video. Subscribe on my website and let me know how I'm doing. Give me feedback, comments, suggestions, criticism, anything. I'll take it all. And I hope to see you investing very successfully very soon. Have a great day.
For your free guide to real estate investing, visit juliamspencer.com.